I promised I'd be talking about the Faceless Ones animation as soon as I got the chance to see it, and now I'm here to discuss it. So yeah, this story has been animated, which I was really happy with when I heard that announcement because I really enjoy this story. I think it is a solid one. There's a lot to like in here. This is a six-parter in Troughton's first season, and it is definitely a story that probably doesn't get the love that it deserves because it's been missing, but fortunately with each of these animations, they animated and a lot more people get the chance to see them. So this review is going to be both about the story, which I have already really talked about in my previous review of the audio and the surviving footage, and also the animation, because that's the big thing with this release is the animation. And I did choose to watch it in the color format because I heard that with the Macro Terror that it was animated in color and then translated into black and white afterwards, like a filter, you know? And I think it was the same for this one. I'm not entirely sure. So I did watch it in the color format because that was the way that it was made. And the animation in this one is good. It's what you'd expect for one of these animations. It is a six-parter, and there are more characters in this one than I would kind of expect for an animation. Usually with an animation, it's going to be relatively limited. Above all, I'm really just happy to have this animation and to be able to see this whole story in animated form. I think that is so cool, and I'm really glad that I can just sit down and watch this whole thing and not have to stop and switch to audio if I want to view this episode. The animation is so useful for that, and I'm so glad that you can just experience this story. And obviously, it's never going to be the same as the original release. It's not trying to be, and that is absolutely fine. And it is interesting to see them, take the animation and just do whatever they're going to do with it. They are allowed to make changes here and there, and one thing I find particularly interesting about these animations is just the way that you get this entirely different feeling watching an animation than you do one of these surviving stories. And that's just the nature of it. And you can watch actually the surviving episodes on this Blu-ray release. And I did re-watch episode 1 as well to kind of compare it to the animated version. And it was interesting to see the directions that they went in that. It is very faithful to the original version, but it also makes some changes here or there that, just kind of make it simpler to animate. And yeah, this is not the most expensive animation. They only have so much money to do what they're doing, so I'm not really going to be very critical of it. I'm really just super thankful of them actually making these animations. And it is unfortunate that with these stories, you can't really entirely capture Patrick Troughton's physicality in his performance of the Doctor. And that is just by nature of, him being such a physical doctor. And really most doctors are. It's hard to really capture them in animated form, particularly with him. And that is a bit of a shame because it means that there's not quite as much to enjoy with this one. And also because, you really aren't getting quite the full experience. I do find that the animated versions of episodes just aren't quite as enjoyable to me. There's a slight something that's removed when I watch in animated form, and I'm not being critical of the animation itself. I am just thankful to have it, and I don't mean to be too negative, but it's one thing that I just wanted to point out is that even though this is a story I really enjoy, and I'm going to talk more about the story in a second, the actual animation, it gives you a different feeling while watching it. It's a different style, and it doesn't quite feel like, oh, you're just watching a story from this era. Not exactly, because, it's an entirely different style, especially when you do watch it in color. And next time I watch it, I will definitely try out the black and white. I think if you're considering getting this story and you're not sure if you want to, then it's going to come down to whether or not the animation works for you. And if you don't like animation that much, but you do want to experience this story, well, you can actually watch the animation in black and white with the 2 surviving episodes in their places, 1 and 3. So then only 2/3 of this is animated and you get to watch those original episodes. And if you want to do that, then yeah, I recommend it because they have 2 of the original episodes on here and they actually have it set up really nicely so that on the black and white disc, you can put that in and it has those original 2, and you can choose to play the entire story with the original episodes in place of their 2 animated versions. So if it comes down to whether or not you're going to be okay with the animation and whether or not you're going to be invested in that, well, that's entirely up to you. But in terms of the story, this one is definitely worth it. This is a really good Troughton story. It is 6 parts long, and this serial does a really good job of continually introducing new elements and keeping things interesting as you go throughout. That is excellently done as they introduce you to this sort of mystery, and you're not entirely sure what's going on with Chameleon Tours, what everything means, and they sort of excellently give you more information as you go along, while also sort of teasing you and not letting you into everything that's happening. And that was done really well, I thought, and I was very happy when I revisited this one to find that, yeah, this is still a good one. I enjoyed it basically just as much as I did last time, but was actually able to see some more of it, which I was very thankful for. So I'm really happy with the entire story, and I do still think Captain Blade is good, but just like with the Doctor, his sort of physical performance is lacking because you can't really see it. It's just, an animated figure. And he had sort of a menace to him, a sort of collected nature. It is sort of lacking a little bit in the animation when you can't actually see the man's face, which is a bit of a shame, but he's still a good character, and I still think that he works well as a villain. And as said, the way the story plays out is just really well balanced and really engaging, and everything going on, I just found myself really entertained by. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler warning here if you haven't seen the story. I want to talk a little bit about the things that happen that you might not want to know if you haven't seen this one, and I know not everybody has, so skip to the time shown on screen if you want to avoid this section of this review. And with that said, let us continue. So yeah, Ben and Polly really don't get much to do in this story, which is a bit of a shame because it is their exit for the show. And in terms of the actual story, that is unfortunate that for their exit, they do get so little to do. But as somebody who is not a big fan of either of those characters, it didn't bother me on that level as, a fan of them. But as somebody who's just watching the show, it is a shame that they get so little devoted to them in their exit. And there's a great moment at the end of episode 6 where the Doctor says to Jamie that they've lost the TARDIS. That was great how he didn't want to tell Ben and Polly that they didn't know where it was. I thought that was a fantastic moment. And one thing I also really like about this is the way that basically no one dies in the story. I think there was one death early on with an investigator at the beginning, and that was, I'm pretty sure, it. I think you went this entire story without anybody dying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I got to the end of this one and I was like, wait a second, did anybody die? And then I remembered, okay, yes, there was one death, but I can't remember anymore. And if there were more that I completely forgot about, then that's on me. But I do appreciate that you have this story where basically almost nobody has to die. It's so close to everybody leaving this story alive, and I love the way that they actually kind of resolve the situation. Yeah, these aliens are coming to Earth and doing bad things, but also the Doctor manages to talk to them and convince them to leave and, promises to help them if he can. I thought that was really cool how the aliens don't get murdered at the end of the story. They get convinced to stop their invasion and try to find another method. That was a great resolution. And I do wish that more often you would have stories like this where there are less people dying, because it really feels very Doctor Who that he is able to, resolve the situation through talking and not through violence. I thought that was all great. It is possible that at 6 parts, this one's a little too long, and yeah, it probably could have been a little bit shorter, maybe 4 or 5 parts, and it would have just been tighter and moved along a little bit more quickly. And while that's true, I think it worked well at 6 parts. I think they had enough in here that it was able to keep me interested. I liked the aliens. I liked how you continued to get more information about them throughout. I liked the disappearances with Polly not being herself and all of those things that were going on all the way through to the 6th part. I thought that was all handled really well. So yeah, this one definitely could have been shorter, but because they had enough going on within it, I don't feel like it needed to be. Overall, I found this one to still be a really solid story, and I'm very thankful to actually be able to watch the rest of this one, which I was not able to do before. I had a great time with it and found that there was a lot to love. This was a really well-paced serial, a lot going on, and it continued to interest me throughout as it introduced more things, and it has a really good resolution. I think that Jamie and the Doctor are great, and Ben and Polly, while I don't enjoy them that much, don't get as much to do as you would maybe hope for this particular story. This was just a really good one that I am very happy with, and I'm going to give The Faceless Ones a rating of 8.25 out of 10. And with that said, I do hope to see you around soon for more videos, reviews, discussions, whatever you will join me for. And if not, that is absolutely fine, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care and have a lovely week.